We're back with a bonus conversation you'll only see here on CBS News New York. And I must talk about another sex scandal that raised its furry little head this week, involving one of the mayor's top aides, Tim Pearson. But it also names two other people in the mayor's firmament, two people from the police department, Jeff Madry, who's the chief of department, and also the head of the Internal Affairs Bureau. And the question is, like, how long can the mayor keep supporting all these people? Yeah, so this lawsuit comes from a sergeant in the NYPD, a former sergeant who was assigned to this unit that is supposed to look at efficiency with government agencies. And what she alleges is that Tim Pearson would hang out, even though he wasn't officially working in that capacity, ask her inappropriate questions, went into a copy room once, someone walked in on him, touching her inappropriately. And I think if the allegations in this suit are true, the behavior obviously is one thing, but then also what was done to cover things up and shift people and to protect the people, some of the people who were the closest to Mayor Adams. But also there was an allegation that Tim Pearson prevented her from getting a promotion. And also goes to what was going on in the police department and also the internal affairs people who had to investigate this. Yeah, and that is not just the sexual harassment, but it's this implication that she was blocked from multiple opportunities and was kind of moved around, which, not that it's the same plaintiff, but it's similar accusations from the assault that allegedly happened in 1993 against Mayor Adams, that when she rebuffed his advances, she was retaliated against. And also there's the other issue is that Tim Pearson is very, very close to the mayor. So close that when you look at the video of his inauguration when he was sworn in Times Square on January 1st, 2022, Tim Pearson is right next to him. And he's very close to him. He gets $244,000 a year as a salary at the Economic Development Corporation. And you even have to ask, since he was at EDC, what was he doing at that office? Yeah, my colleague Gwen Hogan has reported on his allegedly assaulting security officers at a migrant shelter. So I think here's this person who, and for a while, the New York Times first reported he was having dual roles. Not only is he getting his pension from the NYPD, worked at Resorts World, the casino or the racino in Queens. So he seems to be protected by the mayor, just shielded from any kind of repercussions for his actions. It's hard to get an idea of what he actually does on a day-to-day basis. You know, I'm always concerned. I'm always concerned about civil claims and allegations being made in court. I really believe that folks and it's because I do this daily, I think folks need to be given the opportunity to be heard. Yeah. There hasn't been any evidence introduced yet. We haven't heard any testimony yet. And you know, because of that, we have to be very careful with what we say and how, and I know New York City voters and all of us, we're smart enough to know that allegations and a filed lawsuit is very different than a trial. And until then, until we finally get to see the evidence that's allowed to be introduced, until we get some testimony, I believe New Yorkers should be very careful right now, because you can write and you can make any allegation you want. And if we run out there and start accepting the allegations as fact, that really destroys our entire system of justice, right? So I think we have to be careful. I don't know the details. I haven't seen any evidence yet. I haven't read any testimony. All I've read was a complaint of what has been said allegedly happened. So I'm always careful, especially when the allegations are so serious, right? We're talking about people's reputations. People work very hard to protect their reputations, and someone makes these allegations against you, and we accept them as fact without the first evidence being introduced. Shocking. I mean, I'm very careful about that. So I just ask everyone to let's wait until we get some testimony in. So speaking of reputations, what a segue. I'd like to bring up the topic of Andrew Cuomo, who now is being discussed as a possible mayoral candidate and has certainly made moves to come back into the public realm by having second thoughts about congestion pricing, writing op-ed pieces about migrants. So where do we see Andrew Cuomo in the political firmament in New York City and New York State? It seems like he's really desperate to come back to the public eye. He's hinted of the city needs his help. He's doing the thing, it's part of the political rehab tour. You start visiting churches on Sundays. You do the op-eds. Even though he was pushing for congestion pricing as governor, he says, well, actually, no, maybe I'm now against it. You kind of throw your name in enough.
a lot of the allegations against him, there have been questions about that. I think they've really seized him and his team. I'm using they because he has his team of supporters around him. But yeah, I mean, whether he can run again, whether he could win here in New York City, I'm not sure. I don't know if he'd view it as a downgrade. You used to be the governor of a whole state. I mean, to us, New York City is a state.
Does he have a political future at any point in New York?
I hate predictions because anything can happen. And I think at the right moment, he has the money. People, whatever happens with Eric Adams, people might still want that centrist Democrat who, lots of criticism about him later on in COVID, but for a point in time in COVID, he was this fearless to them. He was a strong force that people watched on TV every day.
But I'm going to just give you two names, Anthony Weiner and Eliot Spitzer. Two people who ran into problems, both sexual in nature, and both ran again.
Different. It's very different.
Is it different from Cuomo?
Very different.
Why?
Eliot Spitzer and Anthony Weiner, I'm sure they're good people, but they got themselves into some whole lot of trouble that was very different from this. It was, we're talking about pictures being sent, we're talking about prostitution, we're talking about solicitation, crossing state lines.
Minors.
You know, this is just a different situation altogether. I know it's serious.
So Andrew Cuomo has a better chance than those two, and those two people actually ran.
Yes, and I think this is the issue. The issue is ideologically, he's more in tune with the current mayor. So if you are a moderate Democrat, you share the similar base. Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo have the same similar coalition of voters that propelled them into office. So you cannot have two folks. You cannot have an Eric Adams and an Andrew Cuomo, because who are you fighting for? You're fighting for the African American vote, the homeowner vote out in Queens. These are the folks that support you. And ideologically, you're the same on a lot of issues. Now, the mea culpa idea of I am opposed to this whole idea of a sanctuary state. Oh, I'm opposed to all the issues that you were supporting when you were governor. That's not going to bode well in a race where there's ranked choice voting and progressives are coming at you, when they're going to say, look, he doesn't support immigrants, he doesn't support this, he doesn't support criminal justice reform anymore. This is not the Andrew Cuomo you think he is. Can you imagine the commercials? So it's going to be very tough for an Andrew Cuomo to win a ranked choice vote.
Here's the question that I have. So do we only see Andrew Cuomo running if something happens to Eric Adams and he doesn't run?
It's the only way. It's the absolute only way. So Andrew Cuomo, without an Eric Adams, can absolutely win He
can win?
I think he can, because he's very different from the rest of where the Democrats are. So if you have enough folks that are going to coalesce for a centrist Swazi-like Democrat against the leftists, Democrats in the city, you have an absolute shot, because you're a walking coalition on your own versus a group of people that are going to be broken up into several different camps.
Can he win if he runs with Eric Adams not in the race?
I think if, like you said, a lot of times the progressives, they have a hard time finding one person and sticking with that person. And he replaces, if Eric Adams, for whatever reason, is no longer running in 2025, Andrew Cuomo replaces that centrist Dem, the father figure of the Dem, I am this law and order person telling you what to do.
And don't forget one more thing. When Eric Adams ran for mayor in the ranked choice voting, 80,000 Republicans and independents became Democrats to vote in the primary. And if you look at the margin of victory, at the end of the day, for Eric Adams, it were those Republicans and independents that switched to Democrats to support him in a ranked choice primary. So that, I think, is going to still be there for an Andrew Cuomo. So if you have an Andrew Cuomo running against someone that says, open borders, right to live here, everybody, we should pay it, raise taxes on everybody. If you have that kind of mayoral candidate from the Democratic leftist side, and you have Andrew Cuomo saying, we can't do that, you're going to see a very interesting election. But I don't think that's going to happen.
So I want to change the topic. Chuck Schumer, Israel, go.
I'm going to let you take that one to start.
Well, I think, frankly, the problem is Netanyahu. I think that American Jews and everyone that supports Israel saw what happened on October 7th, is shocked at the terrorism that took place on October 7th against Israelis. We wanted to make sure that Hamas paid the price. We were coalescing as a community. You could bring everyone together. We still want to see Hamas destroyed. But at the same time, we're seeing young, innocent people being killed as a casualty of war. And then you say to me, Hamas is using these individuals as human shields. And we agree they are. They're using hospitals as shields. Absolutely. You know that. So don't bomb the hospital, because we're having innocent babies being killed. We're watching it. And right now you have people that are so pro-Israel saying, hey, wait a minute. When the Senate majority leader says, hey, wait a minute, pay attention. We're giving you billions of dollars. We want you to be very careful. We don't want you to invade Rafah, because you have 1.2 million Palestinians in Rafah. You told them to go there, Marcia.
But here's the question.
That's a problem.
Here's my question. So I get your point, and I'm sure Katie gets your point. But you have a situation where it's just going to be a presidential election. And this seems to me to be something that's tailor-made for a Donald Trump to use to try to court support in certainly religious Jewish communities. And can this backfire on Schumer and help the Republicans in all these races, be it the congressional races in New York, the presidential races, because he's going to try to get a certain segment of the Jewish vote that he hadn't gotten before?
I think he kind of had a lock on that segment of the vote, the super conservative, ultra Orthodox communities. I mean, in New York, and that's who I know the best, I believe they already were Trump supporters. And I think what Senator Schumer was asking for, even looking beyond any political ramifications, I don't know if he anticipated so many, but I think he's looking at the humanity of this. And a lot of people might agree with that side of there are innocent babies, looking at the number of journalists killed in Gaza, and this is just casualties of that. I think as a leader, he's legitimizing the call that many people have been having for months now of looking at actually the actual costs of this, the U.S. involvement in this, and the casualties of that. And I think, you know, a lot of people, even in his area, where he lives in Park Slope, might agree with him on that. But yeah, I don't know if he anticipated, but he might not have even necessarily cared about political ramifications.
Well, Marcia, but 70% of American Jews vote Democrats across the country. That's a fact, right? The idea that we can't separate a conservative government in Israel from the rights of Jews to live in peace. It's insane. So Senator Schumer recognizes that. All Americans recognize the fact that Israel should live in peace and it should be recognized, and you shouldn't commit terrorism against Israelis like we saw on October 7th. But there's something about the humanity that you mentioned that we have to just be mindful. These are innocent men, women, and children. A lot of them have nothing to do with this terrorism, and they're being killed because, as you mentioned, the casualties of war. This is a problem. So is Senator Schumer anti-Israel? Are you kidding me? We may just be anti-Netanyahu, and I think American Jews understand that. I really do. But one more thing before we leave. One more thing, Marcia. One more thing here. Remember, you have Michigan. Michigan has a very large Arab and Palestinian community. And there's also in Minnesota.
Joe Biden needs that state.
He needs them. They're not going to vote for a candidate who proposed an Islam ban, a Muslim ban. They're not going to do that, but they'll stay home. And I've worked this map out several times. If President Biden loses Michigan, it's almost impossible, considering that Georgia is going to be almost impossible for him. You don't think 11,000 people are going to vote for Trump this time? Of course they are. Georgia's out. Arizona's going to be very close.
What about North or South Carolina?
Those states are going to be they're looking at what's happening with the migrant crisis, and the only guy they're going to vote for is Donald Trump. So if President Biden loses Michigan and the Arab support of the folks in Michigan, it's almost impossible for him to win re-election. So what do you do, sit back and watch 1.2 million Palestinians who say, please don't do this. You're going to still do it. You're going to hurt. I think Bibi Netanyahu and his decision to attack Rafah is going to hurt President Biden's chances, because President Biden is 100% supportive of Israel. So is Senator Schumer. And the Arab and Palestinian community in Michigan will not support him if this happens.
On that note, we're going to have to leave it right there. So thank you both for joining me, and thank you for joining me at home as well.